1, 2, 1, 2.
This time coming to you live from two grey towels on top of an unpatched couch.
I think it's been sent back to committee.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there have been some complaints lodged that the heritage listing of this couch would be compromised if anything were to be done to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hence we shall continue to sit on lumpy springs.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. We've got to do something about that dog. Oh. It's not even our dog. It's the neighbour's dog. Dear, oh dear.
Which neighbour? There are several neighbours that we have that have dogs.
Yes, there are. Where's that meant to be?
Not much use asking me.
No.
I can't see what you're fiddling with.
I'm fiddling with Rome.
I can see that you got knobs and sliders and buttons. No dials.
Well, I mean, there's sort of...
Is an equaliser a dial?
I don't know. What is a dial, after all? Other than a knob, really. Turn that dial. It's sort of a knob.
It's
really.
It's a knob where the motion comes from the other side.
Right, okay. Good. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. Let's get this party started.
Colin had a problem and a microphone to spare. Thomas took it up and so the podcast went to air. For weeks and months they trawled through every single DVD. They've unwrapped all the ones they can and now they're cellulose free. Now they're cellulose free.
Hello, dear listener, and welcome to Cellulose Free. My name is Colin, and with me, as always, is my fellow film watcher, compadre and son, Thomas.
Hi, hello.
What have you been up to?
The Olympics are now over.
Hurrah!
They ended in a ceremony.
Held on the high-speed French train that...
No, held in a stadium, like most other ceremonies. It was certainly something. I had a look in the media guide afterwards, and there's this 27-minute long performance piece called Records that Thomas Jolly, the ceremonies director, clearly put a lot of work into. And the media guide has indications of when it is appropriate to make commentary.
And they all followed that, didn't they?
And all through this 27-minute performance piece, it says, do not commentate over any of this. I don't want you to explain anything that's going on. I've given you explanations, but I don't want you to give them to anyone.
You'll know, I'll know, but the rest shall be mum.
And then at the end of this performance piece, out comes French indie band Phoenix, and the media guide indicates, oh yeah, you can talk over all of this 25-minute concert. Go right ahead.
Wow, that's... Sharing is caring, isn't it? Yeah. Let's just share the love.
Yeah.
And then did the US have their little bit?
Yep, they had their little bit.
Oh, good.
Tom Cruise came in and took away the Rio flag.
Oh.
So-called because it was presented in Rio, and replaced the Seoul flag and the Antwerp flag.
Gee, I don't even remember it being in Antwerp.
Yeah, it was in Antwerp.
When did that happen?
Turns out the flag handover ceremony is called the Antwerp ceremony because it originated there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe the Antwerp flag needs to be in every single...
Well, they used the Antwerp flag and then it became tattered, and so Seoul provided their own flag, which went along for a few more years, but was made out of silk and sort of degraded fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And so Rio stepped in and provided their own flag, and so now we're using the Rio flag.
Got you. Right.
Which is like the Olympic flag, but with a colourful border.
Oh, isn't that sweet?
Yeah.
Huh.
So Tom Cruise swept in from the roof of the stadium, because he does his own stunts, of course. Took the flag and took it to Los Angeles, I say in very aggressive air quotes.
Right.
Because it was very clearly a pre-recorded segment.
No.
Also,
unlike the opening ceremony that had absolutely no pre-recorded segments.
And also, when he skydove out of a plane, which he'd taken to Los Angeles, he clearly did not have the flag on him. And eventually
He stuck it down his pants. He had it. It's all good.
And eventually it ended up on Long Beach, where there was a live-to-tape concert from various LA artists.
Were they allowed to talk through that?
Yeah, they could talk through that. Well, actually, at this point, this is LA28's responsibility, and so there are actually no markings as to when it is appropriate to talk.
Now, sorry, getting back to that segment that they weren't allowed to talk through, did they talk through?
Oh, yeah.
Good,
They explained plenty of things.
Good.
Yeah.
Was it all prefaced with, sorry, we're not meant to talk through this bit, but this bit here represents the French battle with the British.
There's a guy here who's playing a piano vertically. Apparently he's famous for that.
Ah, good.
No, the part of the media guide for the LA handover segment was in a completely different style to the rest of the media guide.
So who was it? Was it the French or the Americans who were responsible for leaving Tasmania off the map?
That would have been the French. Yeah, the French left Tasmania and New Zealand
off the world map. There's no such place as New Zealand.
Well, apparently it's not on the world map, is it?
No. Well, neither is Tasmania. Anyway, so that's all over, which has given you plenty of time to fill in the rest of this "So what have you been up to" segments with scintillating information as to what you've been up to since.
Recovering.
Good.
And it's not gone well so far.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You're still on French time.
Well, ideally I'd like to be going to bed a little closer to 5 a.m. instead of 7 a.m, but...
Right.
Yeah, I'll work that out.
Yeah. Start going on some long walks, Thomas. That'll do it. It will. During the day, get some walks in and physically exhaust yourself and then go to bed at a reasonable hour.
Meanwhile, in other exhausting news, local politics.
Oh, must we go there?
Well, we've gone there before.
Oh, yes.
The results of the elector poll did come through, and I would describe them as mixed.
Oh, yeah. Mixed, but I was not surprised. Actually, I was surprised the other way. I was surprised at how close it actually was.
Yep.
I thought with corporate entities that have huge amounts of money that can afford signs on every corner and multiple signs on other corners versus 3 or 4 handheld, hand-painted slogans, it was definitely an uneven financed pre-poll.
Yeah, so entirely within Rosny Parklands for the High Performance Centre was just barely a yes, which I've said this privately, but I think that this elector poll has slightly backfired on Save Rosny's Parks, who I think had unrealistic expectations.
Oh, yeah. Again, as I've said in this forum, I do disagree. I don't think it's backfired because of question B.
Well, question B, both Rosny Parklands and Charles Hand Park, 35% yes, which is, it's not quite what Councillor Mulder was looking for to change his mind in any way, but it's not insignificant.
It is certainly not insignificant, and it is now been put on the record that the AFL have listened and would still want to steer clear of Charles Hand Park. And the mayor has backflipped again and says he wants to steer clear of Charles Hand Park, which leaves them with a conundrum because there are very definite reasons why the council did not put let's stick it all on the old golf course as an option.
Originally, anyway.
it just won't fit. And certainly won't fit without spending huge amounts of money. So this is where I feel it has not backfired. In that it will be absolute political suicide touching Charles Hand Park now, and that's been recognised. But that leaves just the Rosny Park, and like I say, there are very definite reasons why certainly the CEO of Clarence City Council did not want that option and did not propose that option. It has been interesting on Facebook where there has been a Clarence councillor who has just been pummeled mercilessly by rude, arrogant ha-ha-ha-has. And, you know, you've got to respect the vote now, you've got to respect the vote. I also point this out in that this councillor is still allowing these people to make these comments, whereas the mayor himself is booting people left, right and centre. Even I, with a very controlled but pointed statement on his Facebook page, I had all my 2 posts that I've ever posted removed, and I've been blocked by the mayor. So in that respect, this is rough, especially considering that one of these persons who is being vicious, vindictive and outright untruthful is the person who has been buddy pals with the mayor all through this whole thing. So I mentioned to another person who has been quite vocal, and you know, every time anyone made a comment, he would respond with, "You've got to respect the vote. The people have spoken, and you know, this is a democracy, and it's 51 to 49. So the yeses have it." So I said, "Look, you've been quite vocal about this democracy in action type of thing, and yep, I respect that. So what happens now when?" And it's been noted a number of times that there are numerous reasons why the parklands itself on its own is not suited to have the entire high performance centre put on it. What happens when all of that comes out and it's ultimately determined we can't do it? Are you going to continue with your statement of the people have spoken when the people have spoken have said 65% no to having it going on Charles Hand Park? You're going to respect that because you can't have it both ways. And therefore, if that happens, you're going to be fine with either our council finding another spot or it going to the place where all along it's been the most logical place to put it. And silence. Absolute silence. No response back from that, even though he's been responding to absolutely everything left, right and centre. You know, I'm not calling myself a genius here or anything like that, but when you suddenly have certain arguments that they're making in ha-ha-ha thrown back at you, and I, again, wasn't rude, I just said, fine, this is this, this is this. You're therefore going to support democracy in action in that regard. So,
and it's been interesting. The state government, they've been very vague in the time since. Basically, all they've said is that the elector poll is a matter for council. And yes, I suppose this non-binding elector poll is a matter for council. But I think also that when the Department of State Growth have finished doing whatever it is they're doing in either of the 2 parks, it will end up in Kingborough.
Yeah. Yep. And the opposition in state government is going to have a field day with that. Yeah. Because there is very strong suspicions that they had actually decided that prior to the elector poll, which has cost ratepayers $200,000. So certainly in conversations that I've seen in the media and personally, the opposition is very much ready to pounce if that is what turns out to be the case. You know, how long have you known? And why on earth did you allow all of this to play out, all of this money spent needlessly when you'd already put 3 and 4 and 7 together and got 14 and realises that 14 is not a number that certain Clarence City Council mayor is not going to be happy with. Who I should point out, even though he has been a member of the governing party since he was 16, but got booted and has been having all sorts of fun and games trying to get back in. Yeah.
For what it should be said, flimsy reasons.
For being kicked out?
Yes.
Flimsy reasons, but reasons that are in their constitution.
Oh, yeah.
So, not flimsy. If you've got it written down that this is how people are meant to behave, then...
Like, as far as I'm aware, what he was booted out for was not explicitly not making rumblings.
He was, though. He was, with very definite silence on multiple questions asked of him as to how he is going to proceed. Anyway.
Yeah.
And he has also been offered numerous olive branches that he's not been taking up, which has also been making one of his very good friends somewhat miffed and caught between a rock and hard place, which I think is wonderful. Sorry. Anyway, that politics that we were going to avoid.
Yeah, more on that in a few weeks when DSG inevitably pipes up and actually says something.
Yeah. Unfortunately, our geo surveys have discovered that there's a large Mayan pyramid buried underneath the Rosny Parklands, and so we actually need to do an archaeological survey of it, which is going to hold us back. Not to mention the multiple pipes that are going across this that's going to hold them back anyway. This all to build 2 large ovals plus large building facilities, swimming pool, etc. by the end of next year. Yeah.
Flattening land isn't that hard, but, well, maybe this land.
This land, very much so. Thomas, I ask you to go down. We have a little park, just a little dinky little park down the bottom of our street, which has got a slight slope on it. I mean, if you stick a soccer ball at the top of it, it will roll down there well and truly by itself. So that amount of slope. There is a set of swings and a climbing gym in the middle of that sloped field. But to get it so that it's flat, there is a height of me to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, just for that little area of sports ground.
Well,
multiply that by the width of a football field. You're going to have to dig huge amounts that way and fill huge amounts that side.
What I'm saying is, relative to building several large buildings, flattening a piece of land isn't that hard.
Yeah, except that you've got 2 half-metre wide pipes.
Yes.
And they're not just pipes that you can sort of turn off and reroute. These pipes are full of effluent.
Yeah.
And so they first will need to reroute them and connect the rerouted sections before they can even touch digging them up.
Yeah.
The old ones. So time-wise, it's just... Okay, I could be entirely wrong. I'm prepared to accept that I could be entirely wrong and all of it will be done by the end of next year. But if I were a betting man, I'd say I would not be losing any money.
So other than not betting, what have you been up to?
What have I been up to? I got jabbed yesterday. I had a fairly newbie phlebotomist yesterday who, and it's interesting to watch it each time, just a little bit of an explainer. I'm up to like my 145th donation, I think. And I get it out of the one arm, and most people in that circumstance, you get a little bit of a scar, and, the body is amazing in healing up. But I've developed a little bit of a bubble, so that if I flex my arm a bit, this bubble sort of bulges a little, and if you tap on it, it's a bit spongy. It's quite funny. And I'm quite well known at this blood bank for having this bubble. But she'd never come across this. She's fairly new. And she said, oh, what do I do here? And so she called out to one of the assistants. In fact, it was the person who drew plasma out of me last week. And she immediately knew what this newbie's problem was. He said, "It's the bubble, isn't it?" "Yeah, I've never seen one of these before." "No, it's pretty strange, isn't it?" "Where do I go?" And she comes over
right
and said,
there.
Do I go right in there? And I said, "Yep." I said, "It's my target." And she was quite successful with that. As an addendum to the previous donation of 2 weeks ago, where there were dramas at the blood bank and people were rude and obnoxious, I took some chocolates in and spoke to the manager. Manager knows me by name. Everyone knows me by name. I mean, I'm there every 2 weeks. So.
What, you've been going there half a decade at this point?
Something like that. And I dragged them out of a bag and said, "Look, these are for your stuff." "Oh, you don't have to do that." And I said, "No, I got the vibe last time I was here that they had a bit of a rough time that day." And you immediately saw on the face of the manager that she knew exactly what day it was. And she, that's wonderful. And I said, "Look, can you just hold off putting them in the staff room until I'm gone?" You know, I didn't want to make a big thing of it. But I'm in the chair. It takes 45 minutes to an hour whilst you're in the chair, and then one of the staff who was just starting at that time, that shift, they come in and said, "Thanks for the chocolates." So, great. So did that. Today was interesting.
Yeah.
I had some papers to sign with a lawyer over in Lindisfarne, and so I thought, okay, I'm in Lindisfarne. I'm going to double check, just so I've got it in my own head, as to the logistics of sticking a ferry terminal in the middle of Lindisfarne Bay. Well, when I say middle, anywhere in Lindisfarne Bay, which is a very busy marina.
Yeah.
It also is where one of the police launches launch from, and various other vessels. There's certainly been a big hoorah about, on paper, as far as closeness of people to parking cars and what have you, it might be good for that. But your fast ferry very quickly becomes a slow ferry when it has to reduce its speed to a very slow rate to enter into this marina, get parked, avoid large amounts of boating traffic, and then slowly make its way out before it can rev its motor again and go off. So I wanted to get it straight in my head, so I went to have a look, and sure enough, it's just redonkulous idea. But as I was doing so, something in the water breached, and then another one did, and another one did, and there was a pod of dolphins just on the other side of the breakwater.
Happens from time to time.
It does, and I thought, this is cool, I'll get some photos. So they were moving in a fair rate of knots, and then a little further behind them, what appeared to be another pod that was breaching and playing and frolicking, and also travelling in a rate of knots following the first pod of dolphins. So I'm switching between where do I aim the camera, and unfortunately, being at Anzac Park, they've put large fences around the cliff top, quite a distance from the cliff top. So trying to actually get a good view, because between the fence and the cliff top, there's lots of trees and shrubberies and bushes and what have you. So didn't get any really great photos, but got back home and realised, yes, that first lot were definitely dolphins, and the second bunch were a bunch of seals.
Right.
So I don't know whether they're playing cat and mouse or chasings or what have you, or get off our turf type of thing. But yeah, so that was great. So that was what I thought was my wildlife experience for the day, and then walked over Gordon's Hill. And ran into 2 wallabies and 3 paddy melons, and thought, this is cool. Took some photos of those. And then a little further on, a bandicoot, which looks nothing like Crash Bandicoot, but between the size of a small cat and a rat. And I don't like using the word rat because they're gorgeous little things. They've got very long noses, and they nuzzle their nose into the ground and find food. And so it was a real wildlife fest today. But I'm not going to bother trying to remember anything else, because this has gone on for far too long. My goodness. So we're going to watch a film. What are we watching this week, Thomas?
We are watching The Iron Giant.
Which has a "the" at the beginning.
It does.
It's not just Iron Giant, as opposed to Three Amigos. which may or may not come into play when you're trying to guess what the file name for this episode is. What is The Iron Giant all about?
The Iron Giant is the tale of an unlikely friendship between an alien robot from outer space and a rebellious boy named Hogarth.
Good. You're avoiding all the self-congratulatory name-dropping and...
There's also a bedraggled mum, a paranoid government agent, and a sympathetic beatnik.
All played by fairly famous actors.
Yep.
Apart from the kid who plays Hogarth. That's the only name that didn't ring any bells. That's what we're watching. Robots. Possibly dangerous robots.
Yep.
And a kid who befriends him.
And art.
And art. Yes. I have already taken the liberty of sticking the disc into the Blu-ray player. I should point out that we are watching the extended edition that has about 6 minutes of specially made footage that was not filmed but was storyboarded for the original release. Who cares? Roll the tape. We're going to catch you on the flip side and talk about it.
Turn side B too?
Ah, mongrel you are. Good. So what did you think?
I don't think I fawn over this film as much as some might. It's good. It's a good film. But that's about as far as it goes for me.
Uh-huh. It's interesting to read that Warner Brothers basically gave it no support whatsoever. Mm-hmm. It got half the funding that a film of its ilk received, as well as a majorly understaffed crew. Mm-hmm. And that was visible in places.
Yeah.
The one thing that stood out to me was the alternating between characters having shadows or not. I know that sounds weird, but there were scenes where it was glaringly obvious that there's no shadows there. And there have been before, and there were after. I do fawn over this. Where it is strongest, I mean, as far as one of the notes that I wrote, and it's funny that I mentioned shadows, one of its big strengths is light effects and backlight effects. You've got this giant that has glowing eyes and the motion of that light being cast, especially right at the beginning where it sort of segues between looking like a lighthouse and then having two eyes and then segueing again to an actual lighthouse. There's some really stylish, sweet animation going on and lusciousness of backgrounds and foregrounds and multi-layering of, there's camera movements through forests that, even though they're very stylistically drawn and very much Warner Brothers drawn, there's certainly some interior spots that feel like they're in a Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig type scenario. And I think that's got to do partly with the era, but also there's a very conscious stylization of how buildings are drawn and trees are drawn. I think in so many places it really, really is a beautiful, beautiful film. It just reeks of autumnness going into winterness, and it does that really, really well. So yeah, I certainly fall into the fawning category.
It is very technically impressive, especially considering the budgetary constraints, but it is ultimately a kid versus the American government movie, and I've seen a lot of kid versus the American government movies.
Yeah. And I think it leans into that quite deliberately. And it's also interesting, the foreshadowing of a film that came out 16 years later, also directed by Brad Bird, that was a box office failure, possibly not quite so much for the complete lack of advertising that this film got, but Tomorrowland.
Which is okay.
I love Tomorrowland as well. I possibly don't fawn about it quite as much as this, but I really enjoy watching Tomorrowland. I think it was poorly treated, and
that is a film I could watch.
Yeah. Yeah, and if we were to go off in that direction, even though I don't think Brad Bird had anything to do with it, but John Carter is another film that got it was very, very poorly, the promotional direction that was taken, or lack of, for that film also led very much to its failure, and that it was treading on, I would say, old ground. But it seems weird saying that about a film that's based on a book that so many films lent heavily from that came before the actual movie of John Carter. But I digress. Iron Giant, I love it. It's just a great film, and it's interesting that it completely flew under my radar as well. And so I have a debt of gratitude, I guess, to a dear friend, Nathan, who brought it onto my radar and made me watch it. Good on him for doing that, because I've loved it ever since. Going back to little tweaks of lighting effects, there's a spot where the boy is running off into the forest in the moonlight and treads in a puddle, and he's quite far off from the camera, but the splash of the water catches the moonlight, and it's a split-second moment that wouldn't have been any weaker if they hadn't done it, but it was made stronger in doing so. Mm-hmm. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
That it very much added to it. And also the leaning into the mythos of that generation's science fiction concept. When the Iron Giant converts into the gun machine, the stalks that come out of it, the articulated snake-like, were very, very much like the War of the Worlds, the 1950s War of the Worlds guns that came out of the ships on that. I like that homage to it. I've waffled on. Do you have any waffling to waffle on?
No, not really.
No.
I enjoyed the film.
Yep.
To me, not particularly special, to be honest.
It came out the same year you were born. So the number of films and animated films that came out after that well and truly would have been shown to you, and stories that would have been shown to you before this was brought into my world that would have then been shared with you. There would have been a lot of water under the bridge before that. So
we are a product of our environment.
Yeah. Now what's the name? The Giver. If you look at that film's history and the book that it was based on, so many of the other dystopian, young adult fiction dystopian stories very much borrowed from the book The Giver. And those books were made into films. And then finally, someone decided to make a film based on the book The Giver. And it was nothing special. Because so many other things had come out that had already gazumped, I guess, any chance that could have any success. It's a solid film in its own right, but it had already been...
its lunch came pre-eaten.
Yeah. All right, so I loved it. You enjoyed it, but nothing special for you. It's on Foxtel and, of course, to rent on Apple TV, which seems to have basically anything available to rent. Don't know whether it's streaming anywhere on any of the services in your country, but I encourage you to look it up and check it out and hopefully enjoy it. We might move on then.
Yeah.
All right.
The following segment has no title. Thank you.
And we will start over on Discord with someone who, don't know if he actually listens to the show, but he did reply to the message in which I was advertising it, so...
Gotcha.
Gertrude Perkins.
Hi, Gertrude.
Who runs a podcast called Flash in the Pan, which looks at the history of Flash animation on the internet.
Right.
Which I've listened to very little of, but what I did listen to, I enjoyed. A Homestuck episode came up, and I was like, yeah, okay, I can listen to people talk about Homestuck.
Hey, to put me into age context, when I were a lad, Flash was made by Macromedia.
Yeah.
So, there we go.
Well, some of the things that they're talking about might actually be from that time.
Uh-huh.
It's a long history.
So, his comment was...
Yes, his comment. I should actually watch any Apes film sometime. I can recommend the modern trilogy.
Yep.
I have mixed feelings about what we've seen of the originals so far.
Yeah.
And we'll see how that develops.
Yeah, it's a case of diminished returns, I think, from here on in.
I'm told that the next one is supposed to be the better of the sequels, but...
That does not augur well for what your selection for the next movie is going to be. You're shooting fish in a barrel, aren't you? But look, you did veer off in an odd direction last time, so, maybe that'll happen again. Maybe. We can only hope.
Over on Facebook, Helen...
Hi, Helen.
...says, I've decided to catch up backwards.
That's a great idea.
Thanks for the heads up. I shan't be watching this 54-year-old movie thanks to your scathing assessment.
Referring to Beneath the Plunder, the...
Yes.
I would strongly suggest it is beneath you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. A 28 to 300mm lens sounds very useful. My 18 to 200 offers similar versatility with similar limitations and much more weight.
I should point out that Helen has indeed actually held in her hand the lens that I spoke of last week and was quite impressed by its diminutive dimensions.
You can always make the episodes longer by running the beginning or end segments twice. I think you suggested cutting the end bit, which, as you acknowledged, doesn't solve the problem. Gonna be the reverse problem on this one, I think.
So, yes. Yeah.
I got him started. I shouldn't have got him started.
Maybe I can add some from this episode to last week's episode. Okay. No.
But maybe this is not a good idea.
No.
I always look at the episode duration before deciding which walking route I'm going to take.
So you'll be doing Hobart to probably Bridgewater, I reckon. Yeah.
I was going to suggest Campbelltown.
You'd have to listen to it a number of times, I think.
Yeah. Well, she's catching up.
Yes.
Throw a bunch on. Which, I think, with the addition of a Twitter tweet from M...
Hi, M.
...will take us up to the guesses.
It will.
Helen suggests Apes. BNTHAPES.
See, now, I read that as Benethepes.
Uh-huh.
And got a bit confused there because there is a pie, a British dessert pie, called a banoffee, which is made of bananas and whipped cream and thick caramel sauce, combined either on a buttery biscuit base or one made from crumbled biscuits and butter. And I thought for a moment Helen was suggesting British dessert pie, but no. She wrote Benethepes rather than Benoffies.
Meanwhile, M goes with Bunplapes.
Which does not sound like a British dessert pie.
BNPLAPES.
Right.
Now, it is interesting that you would be confused by Benethepes, seeing as that is what you actually went with.
Oh, was it?
Yes.
Oh, so it was. Would you look at that? Maybe when I was creating it, I subconsciously was thinking of bananas whipped creamed and thick caramel sauce combined over a buttery biscuit base.
Or one made from crumbled biscuits and butter.
That's right.
Yeah.
Maybe subconsciously I was, which would be odd because I do not think I have ever tried banoffee.
Great.
Yeah. But now I think I'm going to have to. So that's an option for when you select what we're doing next week. We can either watch the next Planet of the Apes movie or cook up a banoffee.
Let's review some food.
We're branching out. Well, Well, thank you, everyone, for your contributions. And
Do send in more.
yeah.
Yeah, of any shape or variety.
Yeah, we didn't get any dog pictures. I can't remember what the other thing was.
I don't think we did anything. I can't remember us having done anything last week.
Oh, didn't we?
No.
Oh.
We might have.
I'm sure it was dog pictures. And I suggested something as well.
At some point there was something.
Anyway.
What have you got over there on your little orange screen?
What have I got on my little orange screen for this week's? I have that.
Yeah, that is acceptable.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just shown Thomas what the file name for this week's recording is. And if you want to guess what that is, please go ahead at all of the suggested places that are listed in the show notes and mentioned in the closing segment that's read so eloquently by Thomas.
Yes, from scratch. Every
single week.
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely haven't considered rewriting it. No.
Speaking of which, we might get a little closer to actually hearing that again.
Yeah.
By moving on to our next segment.
Pick a film for next week so we can go to bed.
And it's your turn.
It is my turn, and I've decided that we're not going to make a banafi pie.
Oh.
Not least of which because I think we'd have to make this a video podcast.
Oh, maybe you should ask our dear listener to vote.
But instead, I'm going to go to a well-trod well.
That's probably got some dead apes in it. So I wouldn't drink from it.
Well, we're actually going to, before there were dead apes, or indeed dead humans, to find on a dead planet.
Oh, okay.
Because we are going to escape from the planet of the apes. And in so doing, not be there.
Good. Would you read a plot synopsis for Escape from the Planet of the Apes?
Yes. Escaping the fiery end of their world, Cornelius, Zira, and Milo travel back in time to a past where mankind rules over all. Met with suspicion and fear, they struggle to adapt to their new lives, keeping the secret of the future from human society.
Right. The plot thickens and diverts, and somehow they get space travel and time travel, or possibly time travel.
I think one of the things that the modern trilogy has gotten right is not involving time travel in any way. Yet.
No, that's right.
They very well might.
Yeah. So, next week, Escape from the Planet of the Apes. We hope that you can join us. But until then, we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
You have been listening to Cellulose Free. Your hosts were Colin, who produces and edits the show, and Thomas, who makes the artwork and music. Cellulose Free is recorded in the Deranged Cat Studios in scenic Tasmania, Australia. We keep track of our extensive physical media collection through My Movies, which we highly recommend. You can find links to that, as well as other places you can find us in the show notes. Cellulose Free is a Hi Hello production.
Who's this Milo?
It's a malt chocolate drink that you add with either hot or cold milk.
Yeah.
It does dissolve better in hot or warm milk, at least.
Yeah.
But
well, that's true of a lot of things, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. But,
you make the water hot, it becomes excited and less close together.
Good.
And then you make it colder and it becomes more close together until it becomes less close together again.
You were just trying to make editing this just that extra little bit more hard for me, aren't you?
No, not really.
So I'm going to stop.
Well, that's your prerogative.
And go have a Milo.
That's also your prerogative. I won't.
And it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.